Well, fears of a wider regional conflict are looming large in the Middle East today after the U.S. inserted itself into Israel's war against Iran over the weekend. These satellite images show the damage done to one of 3 nuclear sites in Iran during America's surprise strikes. Iran has lashed out at the U.S. for crossing what it calls a very big red line. The U.S. indicated it wanted to resume diplomatic talks, but President Trump called into question the future of Iran's ruling theocracy hours after U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth had said the strikes were not about regime change. So for more on the conflict this morning, we're joined live by CTV News U.S. political analyst Eric Ham. Eric, good to talk to you this morning. So what do you make of this kind of getting conflicting sort of theories, even out of the own White House, of whether or not this is regime change or whether or not this is just like strikes and we're done? What's the latest assessment as for what the U.S. is looking to achieve here, Eric?
Well, I think what we're seeing here is clearly this is a very fluid situation. And right now, the Trump administration appears to be reformulating its own policy towards Iran in the aftermath of the attacks. We have seen both from the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, as well as Vice President J.D. Vance, that this was simply a one-off strike and that now is the time for negotiations on peace. And then afterwards, we hear the president suggesting that regime change might be possible or is also in the cards. We don't really know now where the president stands on a lot of this. But of course, the mixed messages that the president continues to send only makes the situation that much more difficult. And it could be actually making it much more harder for both Israel and Iran to actually find a way to get to a place where there is de-escalation. What we know, of course, is many right now are calling for de-escalation, including the administration. But then again, Donald Trump continues to step on his own message. Yeah,
Prime Minister Carney here also calling for de-escalation. He's actually in Europe right now at a summit. But in the meantime, speaking of mixed messages, Eric, there's also some confusion, or maybe not confusion, maybe a lack of clarity on exactly how effective those strikes were the other night. Did they get everything they were after? Is any more of that clarity emerging now?
Yeah, that's a really good point as well. We know that there's still a verification that we need. And right now there's a propaganda war taking place between the Trump administration and Iran over these attacks. President Trump saying that the attacks certainly completely destroyed those 3 nuclear sites, whereas we're hearing from Iran, they did not. And so I think there's still going to be time to independently verify exactly what happened. And I think that will determine the outcome of both the Iranian and American response going forward.
Okay, and then we know this morning Israel is actually, currently attacking the Evin prison in Iran right now, continuing its battle is there as well here. How is Netanyahu responding to what Trump has done, over the last couple of days? Because it seemed like they were kind of at odds with each other over, whatever else is happening in the Middle East right now. What is Netanyahu now saying about the U.S. kind of assistance here?
Well, we know that the Israelis certainly had been lobbying very aggressively for the United States to actually get more involved. It was the United States that only has these bunker-busting bombs that Israel believed what was needed to actually neutralize these nuclear sites. And so we see now that the administration has gone all in. And also now we're continuing to hear from President Donald Trump speaking in terms that suggest that both he and Netanyahu now are joined at the hip, where, as you mentioned earlier, it seemed like there might be some differences between the 2 men.
Okay, we'll have to continue to follow this really closely. Appreciate the time this morning. That is CTV's U.S. political analyst, Eric Ham, joining us. Eric, thanks so much for this. Appreciate it.